my name's Adrian and welcome to Coffee and Chat. We've got an amazing story today. We're actually going to have a Skype interview with a person who's been a long-term friend of mine for well over 40 years. We've been friends of the family. He's been my cricket coach, he's been my youth group leader, and we're going to chat to him today about an amazing event that happened in his life. But before we do that, we're just going to watch a video. This video is courtesy of the Victoria Police there in Australia, and this really sets up the story for today. So have a look at this.
In 1972, Edwin John Eastwood shocked Australia when he took an entire country school hostage at Faraday near Bendigo, demanding a $1 million ransom for their release. When the teacher and students managed to escape, Eastwood was captured and sentenced to prison. Armed with a revolver, Eastwood repeated the brazen crime 5 years later after escaping from prison. He was on the run for almost 2 months before abducting 9 young children and their teacher from the Wooreen school in South Gippsland. Eastwood chained the children together and bound and gagged Robert Hunter, the teacher, before bundling them into the car of his utility and driving for a number of hours. The journey continued along the Grand Ridge Road through heavily forested hills. The children were threatened and told to keep down, out of sight. Some of the children became car sick, vomiting continually for periods of the journey. Travelling east along the Woodside Road, Eastwood crashed the van into a fully laden timber truck. The driver and his passenger were forced at gunpoint to join Eastwood's van of hostages. Another truckie and his passenger also stopped to help, but were also bundled into the stolen vehicle. Later still, a combi with 2 women aboard arrived at the scene, and Eastwood kidnapped them and stole their vehicle. He loaded his 16 hostages into the van and continued onto a pre-planned campsite at Mill Track in the Mullandung Forest. During the night, one of the male hostages managed to slip his binds and travelled 8 kilometres to a farmhouse to alert police. When Eastwood discovered the missing hostage, he loaded the remainder into the van and got back on the road. He was intercepted by Yarran police, but ignored a request to stop and continued with the police in pursuit. The high-speed chase ensued for several kilometres before police used a high-powered rifle to shoot out the van's tyres. The children would later describe the frightening ride for newspapers, with one 6-year-old telling reporters, "It was not a very good day today. It gave me a headache." Eastwood eventually jumped from the van and started firing at police before being shot in the leg. He was captured and sent to prison for 18 years. He was officially released in 1993 after choosing to decline parole offered in 1991.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm here with a special guest, as you would have seen just from that video, an amazing story. But this person who you see on the screen right now has been a long-term friend of mine for over 40 years, Rob. Can you believe that?
40 years now.
Yeah, well...
That's awesome.
I might remember some details better than you, and you might remember some details better than me, but it was when I was in grade 5, you should remember this, at a camp up at Wandillagong, where I actually first made a decision, to become a Christian, and you were there. And you may not remember this, but you were petrified to tell my mum.
Yes, I remember that, and I mostly remember that because you reminded me, but I still do have a healthy respect for your mother. I wasn't too sure where she was actually, so yeah, I was a little bit second-guessing myself.
Yes, well, yeah, my mum, hi to my mum if she's watching this. She's down there in Frankston in Australia, just out of Melbourne, and you're in Melbourne, Rob, too, well, just out of Melbourne. Where are you at the moment?
Yeah, we're just out of Melbourne, a bit south and a little bit west, in a place called Ocean Grove, not far out of Geelong.
Nice. Nice, near the beach, yeah?
Yeah, a beautiful bit of the world. The area is called the Ballerine Peninsula. There's some lovely coastline, a few rolling hills, and it's called the Surf Coast.
Yeah, oh, beautiful. Well, apart from that, over 40 years ago, which was 78, believe it or not, Rob, 1978, you were also my cricket coach. Remember that? and
Yes.
taught me a lot about swing bowling. And then on top of that, you were my youth group leader.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. But that's all a bit about our sort of background. But today we're sort of here to talk about this amazing book that you've written based on just an amazing experience in your life. You know, I'm not too sure where the best place to start is, but maybe I'll leave that over to you. But, you know, tell us about it. Tell us about it. We just saw just this amazing story just then in the video. But, yeah, tell us a little bit about that. How was that?
Yeah. So it sounds like I might have met you for the first time in 1978. Well, the previous year in 1977 was my first year of teaching. And on my 9th day of that my teaching career, the most amazing thing happened. The important piece of background, though, is that it was a one-teacher school. So I was the headmaster. I was the only adult in the school. There's 9 children only. So I'm by myself as the only teacher.
Wow.
And at recess, when I let the children out for a break, they came running back inside saying, Mr. Hunter, there's a man outside with a gun. And he was a serious psychopath, really. Had a bit of a screw loose in one sense, and chained us all up and kidnapped us, took us away and held us at ransom.
And this wasn't the first time he'd sort of done that, was it? He was sort of had a bit of a history.
Yep. So yeah, 5 years previously, he had kidnapped a very similar situation, one teacher school. We call them rural schools around Victoria. He had kidnapped Mary Gibbs and her 6 female children that were at school that day from a school called Faraday in northern Victoria near Bendigo. He'd been imprisoned, got caught, put in prison, but then he had escaped in 1976, and so now February the 14th, 1977, was when he kidnapped me with my 9 children.
And I suppose one thing that Teachers College never prepared you for was an event like that.
Absolutely not. I thought I was a pretty well-trained teacher, and I was having a really good time, enjoying my first 8 days of teaching. But this 9th day was a little bit out of the ordinary, Miles.
Yeah, and obviously now that's the basis of the book. You going back and going through that. I suppose the question I want to ask. Obviously, there were a lot of people there with you, and I've seen some of the pictures of the talks that you've done around, certainly in parts of Victoria and things like that, but also connection with the other kids. I mean, the story, this book that we're written about, and we're talking to you today about it, but there were the other kids that were very young there. Tell us about just your contact with them now. Obviously, have you caught up with all of them? What's the situation with all of those?
Yeah. So the book has become an absolute gift, really. It's caused us to be reunited. They've given me their absolute permission or blessing to tell the story as it was. It's brought us together on a few occasions. We've had meals together and a reunion, and the education department put on a book launch. Virtually all of them came. They've all been there at different times, not all at once at any one time. But it's been a real blessing for them, and quite a healing experience for them too, and their extended families. Yeah.
Did it have a lot of them had, just trauma over the years that they've had to cope with? And you said this has been a real healing thing for them. Is it sort of been, I suppose, the catalyst to maybe deal with some stuff that, because we tend to like to suppress things, not want to face some of those things at times. How's that played out? I suppose it's different with each individual.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of them have coped really well, but others have found it really hard. the older students in particular, and most of the students were older in grades 5 and 6. Five of the 9 were grade 5 and 6 kids. So they took it very much to heart, and they knew that it was very dangerous, and they were in fear of their life. So it was trauma to the first degree for them, and they acknowledged that as parents, as they've got older, and as teenagers, as young adults, it's really affected their whole lives. Overprotective parents is one of the main things that they all profess to have issues with.
Yeah, and there were more than just the students. Like it ended up being nearly like a cast of thousands. It's he has an accident, takes a few more people hostage, then pulls over some other people. That must have just been so crazy. Like I couldn't think of anything worse, taking more people hostage, because it starts to get out of control. But, in some ways, probably that's the thing that saved you at the end.
Yeah. It was quite a saga of events, really, absolute saga. And God's hand was over it all, Merles.
Yeah.
If God wasn't looking after us, I'll go he.
Yeah.
He had his hand all over it. The timing of different things was just absolutely impeccable, and divine intervention in the most obvious way. I found it difficult writing the book because I've aimed the book at a secular audience so that it's very palatable to anybody who's not a believer in Jesus' saving power. But I'm pretty sure that anybody with half an ear or half an eye would be able to work out that, wow, God, you certainly had your hand on those kids and those adults that day.
Yeah, I mean, back then when, as we said earlier, it was 1978 where we sort of, I suppose, met. Back then I had no idea. Like I had being only 10 years of age, had no idea what had happened, no idea. I think I'd found out sometime after that because, as I said, we've been friends, family friends. I remember your father was, going out to the farm because I spent a lot of time on your family farm and always seeing your father, Jack, there. I've got an older son, Jack. Maybe that's where it came from. But yeah, just, I mean, I never knew anything back then, but how did you get on with life? It would have been really fresh back then. And you were at a camp with us, I was at a camp looking after kids again, looking after, young people. How did you pick yourself up? How did you keep going?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And at the time, I didn't realise, I didn't even know that I'd been through trauma. But God is so good. So I'd had an excellent upbringing. I'd made a decision to be a Christian at the age of 14, an absolute turnaround, pivotal experience in my life where God's presence was just so real. And he was with me, and God was comforting me and healing me through that process. And so I talk about this now in my business called Kidnap Teacher Talks. I go around and do seminars, and I explain these really healthy principles that I followed at that time. I was thankful. I was thankful for so many things because the unfolding of those events were just remarkable. And I can remember choosing, okay, I've got a lot to be thankful for here. There was heroes. Robin Smith, the driver of the truck that we had the accident with, he risked his life to save us, and so I focused on that, on gratitude and being thankful for that. Probably the biggest thing that I did and I didn't know how important this was at the time, but this is what you do as a Christian because the Bible tells us to do this. I forgave the perpetrator, Edwin John Eastwood, the kidnapper,
Yeah.
and I let go. And I said, God, I forgive you. And that was, and I didn't realise how healing that was at the time, but on reflection, I know now how important that was. It was so releasing.
Yeah.
I was able to get on with my life. I explain to young people when I do these seminars that the chain that had been wrapped around my wrist, if I hadn't forgiven him, it'd be like that chain was connected with him with anger and bitterness and for the rest of my life. But because I forgave, I let go of all that and I was able to move on with my life. They're probably the two biggest ones, but the other two that I just refer to a lot is having an outward focus, like going to those camps and meeting with you kids and ministering to people. How healthy is that for you as much as it is for the person that you're ministering to? Because you get over yourself, you forget yourself at those times and you're reaching out to somebody else. That's so healthy and so therapeutic. So, the gospel, the Christian gospel makes so much sense in that sense. As you give to others, you're blessed. And so that was a healing experience for me. And just knowing that you're rooted in God's goodness and his plans for your life, that he has a purpose and a hope for the future. As a young person, you don't realise how important those things are, but as you get older, you realise, wow, that's what's carried me through. It's a bit like those, the footprints on the sand. You don't know what God's done, but on reflection, you realise, Lord, you have taken me through this. Praise your name.
And in that aspect of forgiveness, I actually remember I was working at the TV station in Shepparton at the time, and he was being released. And I remember they interviewed you in regards to that. You spoke about forgiveness back then. Have you physically seen him or spoken to him in any way, shape or form? How was that? I know we talk about forgiveness a lot, and we actually this came up in one of the discussions only probably a couple of months ago at our church here. And it's easy to say, oh, yeah, we forgive. But then when you make it personal, like it actually is really hard. Easy to say, really hard to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the litmus test, isn't it? When you see a person face to face, what do you say? How do you cope? And you don't necessarily have to have feelings of affection for a person like that, but I think it's an obedience thing where you say, okay, I'm just going to be pleasant here. So I met him in court and had quite an interaction with him in court and went out of my way to say g'day. And then when he cross-questioned me in court, and that was a little bit confronting, I guess. But once again, it was an expression of kindness and honesty and integrity in my answers to his questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not hard to forgive in a sense. It's hard to feel. You don't feel like forgiving, eh? But in the obedience of just saying, okay, I forgive, is so releasing. And as a Christian, when we focus on what Jesus did for us, I love those words on the cross when he says, Father, I forgive them for they don't know what they do. If he can forgive in that situation, I think any of us can forgive anything.
Well, I've just got on the screen here, there's the cover of the book there. If you have a look, there's also the website and your Facebook page. What's the best way that people can actually get the book, Day 9 at Wooreen? Where's the best way for them to get that?
Yeah, they can get it through that website, but they can also get it just online from a whole range of different booksellers. and Booktopia or Dimmicks or Angus and Robertson, any of them. And in Australia, they're in bookshops as well. You can order them through the bookshop if they're not in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can always email me or just go through my website, and I'll post you a copy.
Yeah. And you do talks as well, and so same thing. If people want to get you to come and talk, then you just contact you through those same places. Yeah.
Yep. Through the website. Yep. With the COVID-19 restrictions at the moment, all those sorts of events have gone on hold.
Yeah.
But once restrictions are lifted, I'd love to visit your community group or your school or your corporate group, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, it's been awesome, and look, time has gone so quick. There's so much that I wanted to chat about. I mean, we do go back a long way, Rob, and I was thinking about this last night. Your number 4 son, Simon, I think he was born on the same day or day before or after my number 1 son, Jack. I think he was 23rd of April. When was Simon?
Simon was the 20th. April 20.
So a couple of days before.
Almost. Yeah.
There you go. See, so there's still connection. And how's your lovely wife, Judy?
Yeah, she's beautiful. I'm blessed by my wife, Merles, just like you're blessed with your beautiful Joe.
Yeah. But it's so good to chat to you. And we may actually get you back at another time just to chat, not so much about this, but also because we mentioned here, and we sort of don't have time to go in today, the camps. We met on a camp, and which is just on a few people have put up a Facebook page just recently, brought back a lot of memories of all those camps. But you guys still do the Seas camps there. And we'd love to chat probably more about all the camping programs you're still running for kids and young adults and everything, and marriage ones. I mean, heaps of stuff, yeah?
Great. Yeah, we could talk about that all day, couldn't we?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like now it's like all the memories flooding back of all those times. But, man, it's been so good chatting to you today, Rob. I really appreciate it. For those that are watching this, hey, go get the book. Go on and find it. Have a read. I know I had a copy here I gave to a friend here who read it. It said just amazing story. So I know you'll really enjoy it. But we thank you, Rob. Enjoy your time down in Ocean Grove.
Great chatting with you, mate. You're a good man.
No worries. Thank you. But anyway, thanks for joining us for Coffee and Chat today. We'll see you next time. But bye for now.